Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Okay, breaking news tonight on several fronts. First, shots fired outside or near the White House. We have video for you. We're going to show you that. We have, it looks like missile strikes possibly involving Oreshnik, nuclear-capable Oreshnik missiles may be striking Kiev even as we speak, following a plea for help from Vladimir Zelensky internationally and a warning to people in Kiev, including U.S. personnel and citizens from the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, to take cover. Major attack, and it appears it may be underway starting even as we speak just now. So we'll get to that as well. And an imminent peace deal possible, maybe. I just don't know what to believe with Trump anymore, if anything at all, but that's what he's saying. The end may be near with the Iran conflict, and the Strait of Hormuz might be opening shortly. But we just don't know because he's lied so much. You just can't believe anything that comes out of the guy's mouth. Nevertheless, an emergency meeting taking place at the White House, shots fired on the White House lawn. Let's get you the video. And we're going to go to Mike Pekarek in just a moment, who is joining us live here tonight as well. And that will be extremely helpful to us because we need his input to try to make a sense out of this. This is outside the White House just minutes ago, within the last 20, 25 minutes. You can hear the gunshots, or what may be gunshots. So conflicting reports, possible someone may have been shot outside the White House. Not confirmed. Those are reports coming in on social media, but clearly you can hear something that sounds like gunshots. Reporters on the front lawn cleared out of the area, and we'll get into it in more detail when we come back on the other side of this.
We are the Mavericks. Welcome to the Matrix, baby. Hope you like the view. We are the Mavericks. The world is watching. We are the Mavericks.
Okay, let's bring in veteran and military analyst, our Ukraine guy, Mike. Boy, as I was just saying before we came on the air with you, there's never a dull moment with the Trump presidency and more drama outside the White House tonight. Any initial thoughts on what we're maybe seeing there?
I don't want to downplay it because anytime you hear possible gunfire, it is a big deal. You should be alert to that. What I heard on the recording, I'm not there. Who knows what they actually heard versus what the microphone caught. Mm-hmm. What I heard is they were a block or two away. All of the high end of the sound was not there. Anybody that's tried to gauge the distance of thunder knows that the further away it is, the fewer high frequencies it has, and the more high frequencies, the closer. So I heard a lot of lower frequencies. I heard a lot of muffled on the top. There was a guy in the video that was just walking. He obviously didn't feel a whole lot of panic, but the reporter kind of ducked and covered. You can see the guy on the hill.
I'll bring the audio down while you speak. Now, is that it looks to me like it could be a police officer,
maybe
some sort of security, because he's all dressed in black, but I have no way to know for sure.
There's regular security patrolling both, pretty much any of the government buildings, because you got the House and Senate buildings and Supreme Court. And
he has a weapon, and he's holding it, in a professional manner, right? In the proper way. So I'd say
the Capitol Police know what they're doing. But I mean, there's also still a whole bunch of National Guardsmen in DC. She freaked out, but
And then on the other side of this, it looks like there's somebody else in the background there. So you have, I think, two security I don't know who they are.
On the bottom half of that screen, it looks like it's maybe on the top of the White House.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, the guy on the top part of the video looks like, he's walking. It looks like he's got a purpose, but he's not really rushing anywhere, not even for a walk.
Yeah. And see, on the just to the other side of him, if you look closer to the building, very, very small. I don't know if you can make it out, but there's somebody else there also dressed in a uniform that looks the same. So I'd say those guys are supposed to be there.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of you have been to DC, but this looks like maybe it's it's maybe on the back side where there's a whole lot of lawn. It's not on the front. There's a short lawn with a driveway and a fountain, and then across the street is a park, and it's not on that side. So it's somewhere on the sides or the back.
And so would you say this is something, if there were shots fired, would this have happened? This probably happened outside the perimeter someplace.
Oh, yeah. No, from the audio that I sounded, it might have been a couple of blocks away. But at the same time, whatever I might think of the current president, the security of the president is a serious business. They have to take it seriously. If they were herding journalists into a room and not letting him go, there's a good reason for that. A lot of journalists have exactly no training. Some of them don't even have any experience, like wartime war zone experience. But very few of them have training. It's actually a complaint from military veterans is that they're reporting they obviously have no idea what's going on in the military. But that's a common complaint there.
So here's the ABC reporter.
That President Trump has said a deal is close, only for the two sides to remain far apart.
Now, that was a lot of gunfire. So I am that was dozens of shots from what I heard. So
listen again.
The deal is close, only for the two sides to remain far apart.
Yeah, I lost count after 15.
Yeah, me too. I got up to 16. And there's still more after that.
Yeah. So several dozen shots. I'm going to be curious what it's going to be. That was possibly, obviously, when you're going to get that many shots right in a row, that's semi-automatic weapons is possibly the AR-style weapons. I don't know what the National Guardsmen have been issued, whether it's one of the older M16s or the new M4, which is a shortened carbine version of the M16. They all sound very similar. They all sound like that. It's 5.56 shooting out of an M16 type weapon.
Additional footage here just coming in.
Memorial Day since 2022. President Trump promises the prices will go down, but his grip on Republican support on Capitol Hill is weakening.
Yeah, that's 5.56. That's a military weapon fire.
That, to me, suggests they're shooting at someone who ought not be there.
This looks like it's out on the front.
Yeah.
This shot right here. But DC is pretty closely packed. This picture right here is inside of the fence, but the buildings are really closely packed. Who knows what direction it was coming from. So to the right of this picture, you're going to go out on the National Mall with the reflecting pool and the Washington Monument close by. And to the left of this picture, there's a whole bunch of buildings, offices, government buildings, restaurants, hotels. Chinatown's about 5 blocks away. So who knows where it was actually coming from. Now that guy looks a little bit more serious. These are, if they're moving to the right, that's interesting as well. Unless they're hurting, because they might just be doing safety of the people that are on the lawn.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've seen this much chaos and so many incidents focused on a president as we have with Trump. So yeah,
that's hard to quantify. I certainly haven't been tracking it. Sorry, I'm moving my camera around. Sometimes if you let confirmation bias get the better of you, just because there's more reporting on it, and now we have got all the live video that we can go to that we didn't really necessarily have at our fingertips 10 years ago. I mean, we kind of did, but not as much. And certainly not as much as we did 30, 40, 50 years ago. So how much is new? How much is maybe we're at a peak, but this peak isn't necessarily much different than it was in the late 60s or in the 50s or in the 20s. We've had a lot of peaks in domestic violence. But I don't know. I'd have to look at some sort of quantifiable number to be sure of that. I do know that he's making people crazy, and he's deeply unpopular. He just rebounded a smidge off of his second term low, and his second term low was equal to what it was immediately after the January 6th insurrection, which was the lowest point of his first term. So he's near the lowest part. He's doing all sorts of things that are making a lot of people mad. That's not in any way a justification, but there's a lot of discontent and unrest. I did read, and again, confirmation bias, I don't know the subject, but there was a person that claims that if some certain percentage of the United States population is ever turning out to protest, like in person and in the streets, that the whatever party is in power hasn't stayed in power for very much longer, and the No Kings protests are like just right below that inflection point. So this is a weird point in American history.
Yeah, that's about the right word too. Weird. Fox News now reporting that a gunman has been taken down.
Oh yeah, you can hear that much closer. A couple of blocks away. Yeah, I would bet that they're going to be doing that. You can hear.
Oh, Iraq.
Are they actually showing the location there?
It looks like they have it pinpointed with a dot. Yeah, a marker on that map. But I can't.
Yeah, see, this isn't outside the White House, and that white dot is on White House grounds. That's not where this is being taken from.
Right down the street.
Yeah. I mean, it's nearby because those shots from the White House, it was definitely audible, but whatever that Fox News video location was close, the gunshot sounded closer to me.
So the report coming in is that the shooter unleashed gunfire toward the White House. Secret Service fired back, took down a gunman. And let's bring this up and see what we have here.
Apparently was directed toward the White House. If you get toward the west side of the White House, and we're trying to figure out precisely where this was, you have the old executive office building now called the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is kind of a big complex if you're working from west to east. toward the White House, so we know that he was firing in the direction of the White House, and this is the preliminary report from someone who's very senior and would have direct knowledge of this information. Again, a lot of people in town. There was one source that had, questioned me earlier, even before we had this information. There's a lot of motorcyclists in town for the Memorial Day events. They always come for this time, and people thought it might have been, motorcycles backfiring or something like that. There's quite a cacophony of that.
No,
but this is clearly
M16
someone who
fire.
came up and was firing at the direction of the White House. And the president, of course, is at the White House today.
Hey, Chad, Kevin here. If I could just get you to break down again, based on what you've heard, this person was taken down. Does that mean they have been neutralized, or do you think they sort of made physical contact with this person? I'm just trying to get some clarity there.
I was told that they were shot because the Secret Service returned fire against this individual.
Gotcha. And have you heard from any cabinet secretaries or any other high-level officials about what's happening?
Yeah. This is all we've gotten right now. It's Memorial Day weekend. People are spread to the four winds, and the reason I, always jump in on this is that, I used to cover local government, and the best stories about the county sheriff's department would come out through the county commissioners and vice versa. So when you cover Congress and something's happening in the administration.
Yeah, that was a lot of gunfire. I'd be surprised if they didn't just take them down. I mean, somebody's shooting you. You don't have a whole lot of choice unless like an opportunity presents itself. But I don't know what he would be shooting at. Congress is out of town. There wasn't really anyone outside the White House.
Well, there was this emergency meeting that's taking place because of Iran,
but that's
right?
in the basement. If there's an emergency meeting on Iran, that's in the Situation Room. That's well underground. That's well protected.
Mm-hmm.
But even the windows on the White House are bulletproof. I don't know if this guy. I'm assuming it's a guy, statistically they're mostly men, but it's I don't know what they were shooting at. So is it just a crazy person?
Yeah.
But then crazy people can do damage. John Hinckley, the guy that shot Reagan, was crazy. He was trying to get a date with Jodie Foster, who had never met him. I mean, so who knows what?
And in fact, this is like clearly somewhere down the street. So
yeah,
it could be even an unrelated matter.
Well, and Fox News obviously had no idea what they were talking about. We thought it was motorcycles. No, are you kidding me? This is what frustrates military veterans. I'm like, who on earth would think that was a motorcycle backfiring? Obviously somebody that is not familiar with semi-automatic weapons. So, yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it because we really don't know much anyway. We could sit here and talk about it until we're blue in the face. And the truth is, nobody knows other than maybe the police.
For me, it sounds like it was not immediately at the White House. You could hear it, but it was a block or two away. And it doesn't make sense. I would bet a lot of money that this is a crazy person, that the attempt wasn't serious.
And we have this meeting happening at the White House, but I think even more concerning at the moment is what's going on in Ukraine, right? Apparently, as we speak, because we're getting this video coming in now.
That's nightly, though. When I was there,
maybe Russian missiles, possibly. I don't know. You tell me, because we have these.
You got video.
What is that in your
Those
estimate?
look like cluster munitions, actually. I mean, they weren't going fast enough to be a ballistic. And they weren't that close. They're thinking it's Russian. Maybe it's a distance thing. It didn't seem like it was fast enough to me.
Yeah, the footage I've seen of what was supposed to be Russian missiles, like the first time they used them against Ukraine, it didn't really look like that. Doesn't look like it's moving nearly fast enough.
No, that doesn't even look supersonic to me.
No, and it's multiple light sources, so it's multiple things.
They might have even just been incendiary bombs.
See what else we have coming in here. Because this appears to be some sort of security camera or live cam footage. Here we go.
Yeah, I contacted my friends in Kiev, and they said that this was not necessarily abnormal overnight.
Goes on for quite a while, so I don't know. Here it is. Here's that's what it looks like.
Yeah, this is almost on the exact other side of it. You can see with the angle.
And it doesn't look like it's moving fast at all.
No, that looked like, if something was falling at a terminal velocity, Now, it was a lot. If each one of those was an individual explosive, that was a lot. But, one of the things that maybe your watchers should consider is that this is a relatively normal night for people in Ukraine, and it's been a relatively normal night like this for 4 years. When I was there about 18 months ago, there were 3 or 4 of these raids every night. In Kiev, when I was in Sloviansk and towards the front that direction, it was a lot more attacks every night. You just kind of adjust to a new normal. That's why I was the reporter that ducked and covered when somebody that's had military training, been around firing ranges, knew that those shots were a couple of blocks away. And, unless they got a lucky ballistic shot that went up and then came down on your head, you're not in any immediate danger. So she freaked out, but I would have been looking around just because experience and what I've seen, what I've heard.
And this is footage coming in, but in this crazy media environment we're in, I never know what to believe. So I have to say, take all that with a grain of salt. That's what's coming in on social media, and none of that has been confirmed as even being authentic. That could be people posting stuff just to get clicks, Mm-hmm. But it seems to be coming in on some of the channels that are somewhat reliable or credible.
Well, those news reporters, one that looks like it was on the backside of the White House, one that looked on the front, those were
that's real. But I'm talking about the missile strikes or whatever.
Oh, no, that looked authentic from what I've seen.
Yeah. And this is coming on the heels of this security alert being issued by the U.S. Embassy, advising people to take shelter because they were expecting an imminent strike, saying the U.S. Embassy in Kiev has received information concerning a potentially significant air attack that may occur at any time over the next 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And this was issued, I guess, overnight. The embassy, as always, recommends U.S. citizens be prepared to immediately shelter in the event an air alert is announced.
That's pretty normal. I didn't hear a lot of, immediate threat. I did send you that picture, Kiev under attack. It was the last email I sent you.
Okay, I've got them. I've got the images all up on the screen. I have to kind of sort through them. Kiev under, was it a photo or a map?
It was a map. It was a map of Ukraine. It looks very red.
Okay. Oh, that one. Okay, hang on. Yeah, well, Vladimir Zelensky also posting on social media pleading for international assistance, support, help.
Yeah.
Because
he ran out of Patriot missiles.
Yeah.
There's only a certain number of missiles that can actually intercept a ballistic missile, and he's out of the Patriots. So maybe Germany will get him some. I don't know.
Is that the one?
Yeah. So when I was in Ukraine, I still have the app on my phone. It's a nightly warning for where the attacks are. Anything red is a district of Ukraine that's currently under attack. Well, okay. It's either currently under attack or there are currently Russian ordnance flying overhead. So you might have a few drones overhead in that district that are going somewhere else, if that makes sense. You're not necessarily under attack. They're just there. So this was pretty normal. You can see most of Ukraine is red. This is normal for the last 4 years. Russia attacks every night. I don't know if your audience can wrap their heads around it, but this is normal.
And the thing that does give this more urgency tonight, though, is that you have, first of all, Vladimir Putin vowing some sort of revenge for recent attacks launched by Ukraine against various types of infrastructure. And I think you indicated they hit a drone training facility of some kind. And then Zelensky responding to that saying, please help us, and also today he is, I've seen the word demand, but I think he's like urgently requesting admission into the European Union as an equal member again with all of this going on. But he's saying, please help us. They're threatening to send in Russian missiles again. So where does that leave us tonight, Mike?
Well, Ukraine still needs help. There is a whole left by President Trump abandoning Ukraine, that the European Union hasn't necessarily have the weapon systems to fill in the gap for the Patriots, or necessarily the industrial capacity to build a lot quickly. But the United States doesn't necessarily either. So we shot off a lot of Patriots during the Iran war, and then we sent a lot of Patriots to Ukraine. So there's been a lot of those missiles that have been shot off in the last 4 years, and they're not cheap, and they take a while to build. The number that was shot off just in the few weeks of the Iran war, if we don't accelerate production, is going to take like 5 years to replace, just to get back to the levels that we were before the Iran war. So these things, it gets complicated because while Ukraine is in a desperate war, the rest of the world doesn't necessarily feel it. And we were, under Biden anyway, we were expanding our ammunition production facilities and output to try and help Ukraine. But I don't know if any of that's happening with the Trump White House. And in fact, I know that it stopped several times, and Congress actually had to insist that some of the previous allocated money get freed up. That it was left on the table when Biden left the White House, and the Trump administration never sent that aid to Ukraine. Congress had allocated the funds, and the White House was refusing to help Ukraine with it. For what that's worth, there are some French systems, the IRIS system and the SAMT, could fill the gap. I just don't know how many of them are actually in existence right now.
So it has been a while since you've been on, and a lot has happened, and we have a lot going on here tonight. You've sent me quite a bit of material to help kind of bring us back up to date and understand what this is, what the situation is with Ukraine right now. So let's start working through your material here. Where do you want to go next to kind of walk us through all this?
Well, with all of this bad news, let's go with some good news. Let's do the oil stuff.
Okay.
What did I send you?
I've got fertilizer, oil, maize since 2000. I've got those.
Oh, those were some graphs.
Fortress belt, southern Russian supply routes.
Let's do. There's a. Do you have one that is? It looks like
Russian oil.
Yeah, it's got a whole bunch of oil refinery little graphic-y things. Some of them are on fire, some have red X's in them,
and terminal locations. I have.
It looks like a grid of different icons.
Russian losses, supply routes, fortress belt maps, Iran stuff.
This was Russian oil. It's
Just Russian oil. I've got that.
Yep. That's the email that it came out of.
Okay. This is probably what you're looking for here. So let me get it up. And yeah. And we'll go full screen with it. There we go. Are we on the right track?
Yeah. So this is old. This is from last October, but this is it just goes to show how long Ukraine's been going after Russian oil. But this is the oil refinery bingo card, where they would list the number of times the different refineries had been attacked. The reason this is actually happy news is that the Russian government has very limited sources of income, and pre-war, it was in order of importance. It was oil exports, probably grain was second, and then military hardware sales was third. And since this invasion started, the military hardware sales more or less dried up for various reasons. So there was no more income from that. The grain got a little bit weird, although they are selling grain again, but that left oil as their primary source. And Ukraine's been going hard after it for at least 18 months, maybe 2 years at this point. They've been going after the refineries, and you can see that one in the top middle has a whole bunch of little dates underneath of it. They'll go after it. They'll hit some of the critical infrastructure like condensation towers or things that if you hit one thing, the entire refinery goes down, kind of a thing. And then they'll wait for the Russians to repair it a little bit, and then they'll strike it again. And each time this keeps the refinery offline. So you can see at the bottom left, they've tried to do a little graphic of how much Russia was refining in a day is the light gray that was near the top of the oil barrel there. And then the dark gray at the bottom is what Russia's actually capable of refining now. So you can see this, like I said, this was last October, so this is not new. But Ukraine has continued to go after it since then. They haven't let up. So you can see how much of an effect this is having. You don't necessarily need to show it, but one of the other pictures that I sent in that same email was a document from the United States State Department. We can talk about this. So this was not necessarily big news, but I wanted to kind of use this as a window in. This is a Russian patrol corvette. It's not a very big boat, but it is a cruise missile launch platform that Russia has used to attack Ukraine with cruise missiles. The right side, you can see one of the Ukrainian drones attacking it. It's hard to see on the overhead, but you can see that white line going from the top picture over to the ship at the dock. When you really study the higher res satellite picture, you can tell that the sensor mast midships, a little bit forward of midships, is destroyed. That's visual confirmation that the drone took out the guidance system of this corvette, which means it can't launch anything. It can't shoot its gun. This is completely incapacitated until they repair it. If you go to the next picture, that's the location of that patrol frigate. It wasn't even in the Black Sea. The reason why I brought this up is that this is one of Russia's oil export terminals. And they go through the Caspian Sea. They had been going down to Iran to launder their oil to avoid sanctions. They would send their oil to Iran. Then Iran would go ahead and export it, pretending that it was Iranian oil. So Ukraine has the ability to hit Russian naval vessels here, but they've also been hitting the oil export terminal, because what's good is pumping oil or refining oil if you can't export it. So they've been nailing this among a couple other export terminals, and this is just another example of what they can do. This next picture is the State Department that under President Donald Trump, there had been sanctions against Russian oil. to limit how they can sell it and who they can sell it to, how the banking transactions work. And there was a price cap on Russian oil that I think it was $45, $55 a barrel. It was something lower than the previous pre-Iran war market rate of $60, $70, which, it was just a limit on how much money. It was a way to squeeze Russian revenue and military to help inhibit their ability to conduct war inside of Ukraine. The Trump administration lifted this about 60 days ago. It had run out on a Friday, and by the end of Saturday, this is the renewal that they were going to do it again. So now Trump lifted sanctions on Russian oil, so they can now sell it at market rates. The thing that this doesn't do is Europe is still sanctioning the oil and boarding ghost fleet tankers. And then, of course, Ukraine is using what they called kinetic sanctions. So the next picture is kind of a graphic of that patrol boat. I don't know why it's out of order, but circled is the sensor mast that they hit. Right behind that sensor mast, there's a little flat area that's elevated a little bit. It's either 4 or 5, probably 4. Those are the vertical launch cells that launch cruise missiles at Ukraine. You can tell it's not a very big ship.
Okay. Any other pictures in that grouping?
No, we ran through all those. What was the other? If you go to one more Russian oil. I sent that email. I'm like, oh, I forgot this one. This would just be a single map.
A single map?
Mm-hmm.
I think I put it over here on a different tab. In fact, I might need to bring it back up. So let me take a short break,
okay,
and I'll get it queued. Stay with us. More coming up. All I need to do is find this thing to click on right here.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're back. I think I have what we need queued up, and we'll bring Mike back in. And you tell me, is this what you were looking for?
Oh, no, but this will work. So this is a map of the oil terminals. And you can see some on the Caspian Sea that I mentioned, some on the Black Sea. The one that's right above Poland, there's actually a Russian enclave of Kaliningrad right there. That's another export terminal. But the main ones they've been hitting are just south of Finland. They're not quite St. Petersburg. They're just to the west of St. Petersburg. That's one of their major oil export terminals. And Ukraine just hammered it so hard that basically that one shut down. It's kind of hard to export oil if you can't load it onto anything. This has follow-on effects that there's been vague reporting recently that some Russian companies, one of the small ones, has shut down a lot of their oil wells. That means that they just turn off the production, but it's a little more complicated than that. Sometimes you have to cap it. Sometimes you can just shut it down if it isn't a very high pressure well. But most of the time you have to cap it, and then there's going to be fluid separation and wax buildup, and the water is going to settle in weird places underground. It can permanently damage the well if you try and shut it down, to the extent that to get production back up, you have to re-drill the well, which takes time and money and effort. And a lot of this is in Siberia, so you can only do it some of the year because it's too cold some of the year. This small company is reported to have shut down 400 or more wells because Russia can't refine it. They can't export it. Ukraine's also been going after storage containers, so they can't store it. Ukraine's been hitting their oil infrastructure really hard. So the war is now coming to Russia in a big way. This is the one I was looking at earlier. This, I don't know if your audience. Yeah. Okay. So you can see Moscow, and then you can see Kharkiv down at the very bottom there. That's Ukraine. And then Moscow is about 1,000 kilometers away, maybe 800 kilometers. But if you go to the top right, that is currently the record holder for the furthest refinery Ukraine has hit. This is near the city of Perm. It's in the Urals, which, if anybody knows their World War II history, this is where the Soviet Union had moved all of their factories to get it so far away from the German invasion that the Germans would never be able to reach the factories that they had moved into the Urals. Ukraine is hitting stuff in the Urals. This is kind of a big deal. This is a long ways away. You can tell that it's roughly 4 times the distance to Moscow.
Wow. Okay, where do we go from here?
I got to pull my stuff back up. Not that.
And they have been very innovative with the drones. I saw just this week a report that they're using balloons.
Yes, I saw that.
Extend the range.
Mm-hmm. Because the one that I saw had a picture of a winged drone, which means that they have to take off. Now, they do use catapults to launch them, which means that you don't have to use the onboard power supply to get it up to speed, or at least to a certain altitude. In aviation, it takes a lot of fuel just to get off the ground and then climb to cruising altitude. That's a significant portion of the fuel, is just to take off and climbing to cruising altitude. So that balloon, if you can get it up, you eliminated all of that power drain. So that can significantly increase the range of the drones. And Ukraine's been working on this. One of the other things that I was going to look at is the southern Russian supply routes. So you're right about the drone innovation. The amount of new things that they have to go through their combat and their fight and their nightly attacks from Russia. And they're like, what if I tried this? And the innovation cycle is just astonishing. Weeks sometimes. I might have brought this up. I didn't send you a picture of this. You had too many of them already. But when I was there in October and November of 2024, the Ukrainians I had visited one manufacturing research place that had been a civilian car repair garage before the war. But they had conceived of, done the math on to shape it for radar reflection, then built some test articles, refined it, and then they were ready for production when I visited them. So it was a highly secret, still a test product in early November 2024. It saw its first combat use in December of 2024, and the U.S. Army keeps it's online now. It used to be in a book, an online visual recognition with like a silhouette and a picture, if they have one, of this is, if you're somewhere, this is what you're looking at, a way to identify different things of ordnance. And by January of 25, the Army had it in, just for the rapidity that it was still in the testing phases in November, and by January it was already in regular use, just for the rapidity of this.
So what are you looking at here?
This is, so going back to the drone use, Ukraine has been achieving a state of drone superiority. It's a form of air superiority, but Ukraine's been hitting Russia with short battlefield distance drones, which is more or less the front lines and 20 miles back. This is going back to the medium strike, where you're going 50 to 100 miles, depending on the same kind of a concept of a distance. If you go up a little bit north, there's going to be a second one that I'm going to show you, but you can see on the top right of the map is Mariupol. East, that goes to the Russian city of Rostov. This, you can't see it on this map. I'm so sorry. I clipped it so you could see some of the other details better. But the Rostov to Crimea, which is in the bottom of this map, that road goes through Mariupol, and you can see that major road on this map. This is the main Russian supply route to the Kherson front line, the Zaporizhia front line, and Crimea. On a different map, you can see that it is one of the main lines into Donetsk, but it is not the only line. The reason I bring this up is that road from Rostov to Crimea, Russia recently shut down to civilian traffic because it's just too dangerous. Ukraine's been hitting that road really hard. There is active partisan activities in Mariupol and Melitopol, which is more or less, it's a little bit west. Bryansk is that, I'm not remembering my Berdiansk, is that port city. Sorry, I go up. Berdiansk. Yeah. It's been a while since we talked about that. That used to be one of the big spots. But there's partisan activity, both Ukrainians and Russians that are just done with it are sabotaging things, blowing things up, making Russian vehicle flat tires, hampering the railroad lines. There's partisan activity all over the place. If you go south, the black circles that I put in, those are the only 3 roads into Crimea that are worth anything. You might have a dirt track, but on the north, you have to cross some streams and some rivers and some little ocean inlets. And then on the south, that's the Kerch Strait that they put the bridge over. Those are the only 3 routes into Crimea, and that Rostov-Mariupol road is now under that's a questionable supply route. The Kerch Strait bridge, the railroad is still at 30% capacity. The roadway is okay for now. Ukraine continually attacks it. They force Russia to put air defenses there and sea defenses. Ukraine recently sunk a Russian patrol frigate over there that was trying to defend the bridge. So that bridge is still under nearly constant attack. There's a different, go 2 pictures over from here.
I don't think we actually even have. I think, hang on a moment. I have to bring that down. There's only the one picture on that.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure where to go next. I only had the one image. Let me
send that to you, because this is actually kind of an important map. There it is. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with that. The attachment.
Okay, I'll bring it up here. So I've been seeing some analysts online, even within the last week, suggesting Ukraine might actually be able to get Crimea back, which is something that had previously been called a pipe dream, that there's no way that would happen. But have things shifted that much? Is that even possible?
Mm-hmm. In the last 6 months, I've gone from what I had been saying for 3.5 years was Russia can't win. Their military was not competent. They were not doing things right. They weren't advancing quickly. The Ukrainian resistance was just too high. Russia could not win. That is significantly different from where I am right now, which is tentatively saying that is Ukraine actually winning at this point, which they might be. They're retaking ground. Russia in 2023, 24, and this is the one. 2023, 24, and 25, Russia was averaging the gain of roughly 2,300 square kilometers, which if you divide that by 12 is a bit less than 200 square kilometers per month. In April was the first time that Ukraine had Russia was gaining ground in some places. Ukrainian was gaining ground in other places. The net gain in April was Ukraine actually got about 80 square kilometers more than Russia did. So effectively, Ukraine pushed Russia back, which if in their previous slow pace of 200 square kilometers a month, now that was a net loss of 300 square kilometers, because not only did they not gain what they had normally done, they had actually lost nearly 100 square kilometers. So that's kind of a big deal. This is this map here is one 24-hour map of the Ukrainian strikes on this Rostov to Crimea, with some other stuff too. There's a little northern spike into the city of Donetsk. But if you zoom in on it, there's going to be a whole bunch of little red dots on that road. Mm-hmm. And each one of those red dots is going to be a fuel truck or an ammunition truck or, new soldiers going somewhere. Ukraine's been using Crimea as shooting fish in the barrel for Russian air defenses. So maybe they were trying to send another air defense over there on this road. Ukraine's not having it. There's video of this road that I did not show because some of it's a bit graphic, but there's just Russians driving down this road. There's wreckage everywhere. A lot of it's still on fire. There's a lot of bodies. And this is not the front line. I don't know if you can tell that, but it's not the front line. But given the daily strikes and the current carnage that Russia hasn't cleaned up, it kind of looks frontliney. You can see where a lot of that Donetsk area, there's a lot more red dots up there. But this was kind of a shock to me. I knew this road had been under Ukrainian fire. And maybe 6 months ago, I was a little bit confused because Ukraine and Russia had gotten really good at repairing railroad lines. Both Ukraine and Russia use railroad lines a lot for resupply. And this Rostov-Crimea road, there's a roadway, but there's also a parallel railroad that goes along basically the same path. And there had been a Russian fuel train that had been on fire, and they didn't put it out. It was on fire for a week or two. And then the wreckage just sat there. Russia wasn't cleaning it up. And it confused me. This was about 6 months ago. And now I finally understand that it's just Ukraine has been getting this good at their medium strike. And these aren't small strikes. These are FP1, FP2 drones. These are winged drones that carry a significant payload. They have first-person video, so you got man in the loop that can actually aim the drones, but you also have inertial navigation and Starlink and GPS that they have various alternate ways that they can guide these drones. And they carry a big payload. It can be 100 kilograms of high explosives, it can be as much as 300 pounds of TNT equivalent, because high explosive is more powerful than TNT. 100 kilograms is 220 pounds ish. it's not fooling around explosives going on.
And, to put a human focus on this for a moment, so people can kind of understand what is really at stake here, especially for people who live in Crimea. When in 2014, when the initial invasion was conducted and Russia came into Crimea, I don't think people here understand or appreciate that the people who were living there, if they didn't accept Russian citizenship, if they opposed what Russia was doing in any way, as they came in to basically invade their home, they were in deep trouble. So a lot of people had to flee, and they left Crimea, leaving everything behind. They lost their homes, all their possessions. There's no compensation of any kind for the people who had to flee the incoming Russian forces. Most of note, and I was doing some research into this over the last few weeks, the indigenous people there, the Tatars, they have a long history of being oppressed, slaughtered under the Soviets. They were deported from their indigenous homeland, right? This is the indigenous population. Many, killed, slaughtered, starved to death. This is, and today Russia does not really respect or recognize their rights. Right?
This is a Tartar unit patch that I was given when I was there.
Yeah.
So it's a major portion of their military. They take pride.
And, many countries see what's going on there as an attempt at cultural and ethnic genocide that's being attempted again.
Russia has stated numerous times that there is no Ukraine. Ukraine is a fiction. They're basically Russians that don't understand that they're Russian. There's been a history of, not just in Ukraine. I read today that today is the anniversary of a purge that the Soviets did in Lithuania, I think it was. That it was 1948, and Lithuania is a small place. It was 50,000 people that got sent to basically Siberian gulags. And it was ethnic cleansing is the term where you go into a region, and if there's a population that's resisting in ways that you don't like, you clear them out. You make room for people that you might send. It was called Russification, where they would export Russian natives to these places to make them more Russian. When I was in Kyrgyzstan during my deployment, this would have been 2008, a long time ago. Kyrgyzstan had been another one of those things where the native population in Kyrgyzstan, the Kyrgyz, were they lived in yurts. It's like the last dregs of the Mongolian, Genghis Khan, Mongolian Empire with. But they had those round tents, the yurts and stuff like that. But yeah, it was Russified too there.
And if these people the people who fled, they abandoned their homes. So you've got these abandoned apartment buildings, you have abandoned houses, and then the Russians came in and no compensation paid to anybody. They just confiscate them. And it's my understanding that a lot of these homes were then allocated to military personnel. They didn't get them for free. They sold the expropriated homes to Russians so that they could come in. So you're forced out of your house. You have to run away, and then they basically sell it. The government of Russia sells it to Russians who then move into the area to Russify it, to bring the language, the culture, and force the other people out.
And in Crimea's case, as opposed to like Mariupol and some of the stuff on the Azov Sea, in Crimea's case, like around Sevastopol, it was supposed to be this vacation destination. So there would be going to be resorts and stuff that catered to Moscow and St. Petersburg residents with money. So yeah, it was completely not for the locals. Although recently I've been seeing Russia's been so worried about Crimea that all of the beaches have been fortified with barbed wire and dragon's teeth and all sorts of nasty stuff.
Yeah. So it looks like it's back in play, and it's maybe possible for Ukraine to retake it even after all this time. 2014 is when Russia first went in.
It'll be interesting what actually happens. Right now, Russia is in danger of not being able to hold it, which is different than Ukraine going in and invading it. Mm-hmm. But if Russia can't supply their people, it's going back to the old thing where you study logistics, the beans and bullets. If you can't get into the place where you've got the military people, if you can't get food, ammunition, fuel, any of the things that you need to run and operate a military, you just can't get the stuff there. How can you expect your people to actually do their jobs, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to run out of food. They're going to run out of fuel. They're going to run out of ammunition because you can't get it to them. That's why this Rostov to Crimea road interdiction is so important. Why the railway bridge on the Kerch Strait getting damaged was so important. A couple of weeks ago, the very last rail to ship ferry that had been taking fuel rail cars between Russia and Crimea through the Kerch Strait, that was sunk. They're basically choking off Crimea. They're making it uninhabitable for Russians. So we'll see.
And regardless of your views on the war, it's just a tragedy to see people losing their homes. I mean, imagine here in Canada, and I think even in the States, it's hard for people to even wrap their heads around or think about somebody invading your country, coming into your neighborhood and forcing you out of your home. So you have to flee with nothing. You're left with nothing, and they take everything and then basically sell it or give it away to the invaders, to other people coming in to replace you.
When's the last time there was active combat on actual Canadian soil? We're not talking World War II. World War I, World War II doesn't count because the combat wasn't here.
War of 1812?
Was it that long ago?
That? Probably. That's when we burned your White House. And we still joke about it today.
As you should. For the United States, it was our Civil War in 1861 to 1865.
Yeah.
Who in the United States has any remote idea of what this means? You know, if you haven't been deployed, if you haven't actually seen it, but you haven't seen it on your home soil. Sorry, I always think of it a tangent because the United States tends to name our ships after some of our ships get named after battles we've won. Mm-hmm. And so, like in World War II, we had the Yorktown and the Saratoga and the Lexington, which were all victories over the British Empire in our Revolutionary War. And you see the Yorktown serving next to a Royal Navy ship. That always made me laugh a little bit. So, sorry, I had to bring that up.
Well, hopefully we don't repeat that. But with this current guy in the White House, I don't know what the hell's going on. So, like I say, if you're going to invade, just let me know and I'll get the barbecue out. So that's kind of where I'm at. Where are we going from here?
Have we talked enough about Ukraine or?
I don't know. You sent me a lot of material here. So
let's see what else I've got. We don't want to. Oh, I did. If you can pull up that fortress built video. Or the maps, either one of them first.
Okay, I've got Operation Vesna with your Wikipedia stuff.
No, that was the Lithuania thing.
Okay. And the one video you sent me, I could not get that link to open properly.
It's Facebook. If you can't, then no worries.
But I've got the Fortress Belt maps.
Yeah, let's pull that up. What you're not going to see, because the video didn't load, is that these fortress belts are a lot more than just cities and roads. Ukraine built miles and miles, hundreds of miles of, 5-meter deep trenches, 5 meters deep and 10-meter wide trenches. Sometimes they'll throw further pits or barbed wire or spikes in the bottom of that trench, then what do you do with that dirt? You put a berm on one side of that deep trench so that it's yet taller on one side. You've got, I don't know if people know what dragon's teeth are, but they're concrete. They can be various shapes, but oftentimes they're pyramids because it's just easier to pour the concrete that way. But they're going to be 2 or 3 meters tall. Something that a tank or some sort of tracked vehicle can't get over. Most modern tanks can get over an obstacle, a vertical obstacle that is 2 meters tall, maybe 1.5 meters. A Humvee can do nearly 2 meters of a vertical, but these dragon's teeth are made to not allow any sort of vehicles to pass. There's mines. There's watchtowers, there's bunkers, there's trenches, and it's hundreds of miles. So you can see that the blue circle right there, the cities of Konstantinivka, Kramatorsk, and Sloviansk. Sloviansk is where I was when I was touring, going through Ukraine and visiting different units. That is the fortress belt, and on this map that you pulled up, it shows some of the terrain that Ukraine is working with. The reason I wanted to talk about this, can you go up and zoom in on that belt right there? So if you look at this, you can see it's right on the front line, which the front line's fuzzy, but on this map, it's that yellow line. So it's right on the front line. This is the prepared Ukrainian defensive positions that are part of the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts that Russia is demanding Ukraine turn over in any sort of peace deal. This is the terrain that Russia wants to be able to gain without having to gain it with their military, because their military can't do it. If you go up, not that far. So you can see the blue little kidney thing with Sloviansk. Yeah. So this is in a river valley with a lot of really rugged terrain. And if you go outside of that dotted blue line, which is the border of Luhansk and Donetsk, the terrain starts to flatten out a whole lot. So this is some of Ukraine's most defensible territory. And they put years of effort into building these hundreds of miles of defensive lines there. And Russia wants them to give it up. This is part of the Trump trying to broker a ceasefire that forces Ukraine to give up their most heavily defended territory. It's just another aspect of how silly the Trump idea of trying to end this actually are.
Okay, you want the next one?
What do you got?
I'm going the wrong way on it, I think. So
this was more of a generalized, where is this map? That other one, this is that same one that we were just looking at.
Is that the one?
That's more of a generalized map. There's another one that's a lot more colorful.
This one?
Yeah, this shows different gradations of terrain that are more suitable to rapid movement, trucks, tanks, that kind of a thing. And if you zoomed in on that, that's really rugged country around Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinivka. And that sea of green just to the west is really easy territory to drive through. Pretty flat. So that's just for a measure of what is Russia actually demanding? Well, they're demanding that Ukraine give up their most fortified thing that Russia has no hope of taking. That's when I say that Russia is looking to achieve military gains without actually succeeding on the battlefield. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And it looks like Trump is walking away from, at least for the moment, based on what I heard from Rubio this week, they're kind of giving up on peace negotiations on the Ukraine front. They're just kind of, I think, trying to ignore it now because they haven't had any success trying to do it their way.
Well, Trump thought that he was such a good friend with Putin and he could intimidate Zelensky, and he didn't understand either of those relationships. When he said Zelensky didn't have the cards, and then a couple of months later we had Operation Spiderweb that knocked out a huge portion of Russia's nuclear-capable strategic bomber force. And then, of course, we've seen the expanded drone war and hitting on Russia's oil infrastructure since then, where it looks to me like Zelensky had an easy dozen cards to play that he was in the process of playing when Trump was being an idiot in the White House to him. So Trump didn't understand Zelensky. This has happened before where in 2018 in France, Trump refused to visit the Bellewood Cemetery, where he just didn't understand military sacrifice. He said that anyone that would die on the battlefield was a loser and a sucker. He just didn't understand what they had to gain for it. He has no concept of what it means to be attacked and for somebody to put themselves in between genocide and their family. They're like, no, I'm going to stop this. You're going to have to go through me. And Trump doesn't understand that concept. It's just completely foreign to him. So he doesn't understand Zelensky. He doesn't understand Ukraine. And the idea that the United States withdrawing support would somehow make Ukraine decide, oh, well, maybe we aren't going to defend ourselves anymore, which I could have told you back then, because I had a friend on the front line that said, if we run out of ammunition, we'll fight with shovels if that's all we have, but we're going to fight. And Trump has no idea. So the whatever I might knock the Biden administration on for maybe not giving enough weapons fast enough into the hands of the Ukrainians, that's a little bit more nuanced than I'm stating right there. But I might have,
Mike, it isn't just that. It's the strategy, right? Because until recently, Ukraine was handcuffed. They weren't allowed to strike military infrastructure, weapons systems, missile launchers inside Russia.
Well, they weren't allowed to use Western weapons to do it, and they hadn't innovated into homespun Ukrainian weapons, which is what they're entirely using right now. Anything that's hitting inside of Russia is a Ukrainian weapon. But they, in 2022 and 2023, it's still more complicated than that, but Ukraine needed to push Russia back on the actual battlefield, which means they needed infantry fighting vehicles and tanks and airplanes, because it took us so long to get them F-16s. They needed all sorts of that battlefield stuff. They still need that, but the type of combat has evolved and changed over the last 4 years. So yes, they still do need that kind of stuff, especially if they want to actually regain ground in a significant way, because drones don't regain ground. But like I said, drones are choking off Crimea. So Russia might have to abandon ground, which means Ukraine would need to have the infantry that could go in there and actually occupy it and hold it.
But we have seen them using even ground drones.
Yes.
And that sort of replaces your personnel on.
That's been in the last year that they've been really innovating the ground drones. There has been one successful attack using ground drones in combination with aerial drones. But they're drones that might be 5 feet long, maybe 6 feet long, 3 or 4 feet wide. They might be waist high, maybe a little bit more. They're going to mount a machine gun or a rocket, or they're going to be able to lay mines with it, or they're going to be able to resupply troops. Some of them, they're mobile drone launch stations. I mentioned about range, where you can send a ground drone out 10 miles and then launch the drones from that ground drone. All of a sudden, you just extended your range by 10 miles. So any way that you could use a ground drone, they've been doing. They've been using them on the defense. The Ukrainian to Russian casualty rate has been 10-1 or better for the Ukrainians since they started such heavy ground drone use. because their defensive positions that Russia is trying to attack are manned by a machine that's being operated by somebody that's 5 miles away, right? So if the Russians are attacking a machine, the Ukrainians aren't going to take any casualties, but the Ukrainians are going to have, a dozen machine guns mounted on ground drones that are just taking apart the Russians trying to attack. And there might be 100 Russians fall in that one battle, and not a single Ukrainian soldier was even at risk. So that's the kind of fight that we've been seeing. More accurate notions of the Russian wounded to killed have been 2 killed to 1 wounded. And this is more, anybody that knows military history knows that that's a big number. In modern, even in World War II, it was more like 1 or 2 killed to 10 wounded. That you were just far more likely to be wounded. But Russia doesn't evacuate their wounded. Sometimes their wounded will crawl back to the Russian lines, but then they're going to send their wounded right back in. It's not going well for the Russians, which everything's adding up to like, is Ukraine actually winning? Which is a very big shift for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else on the Ukrainian front, or are we going to shift gears?
We can shift gears.
Okay.
Unless anybody had questions, but I haven't been watching the chat at all. So
yeah, it's okay. Let's take a short break then, and then we'll move over and start to talk about what's going on with Iran.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We are the Mavericks. Welcome to the Matrix, baby. Hope you like the view. We are the Mavericks. The world is watching. We are the Mavericks.
Well, off we go to Iran, or at least to the White House for the moment, through Truth Social, with Trump posting this, saying, "I'm in the Oval Office at the White House, where we just had a very good call with President Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud of Saudi Arabia, and blah, 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 and all these different countries from the Gulf." And he's saying they have basically negotiated very close to an agreement. An agreement has been largely negotiated, is the key line here, subject to finalization between the United States of America, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the various other countries as listed, long list. Separately, I had a call with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, which likewise went very well. Final aspects and details of the deal are currently being discussed and will be announced shortly. In addition to many other elements of the agreement, the Strait of Hormuz will be opened. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
We'll see if that actually plays out. Well, it's the problem is he said stuff like this before, so maybe it's true. So I have no idea. But I mean, I hope that they do something good. I said at the start of this that I have every faith and confidence in the American military to act professionally and do their jobs extremely well. I have exactly no faith in this White House or the administration to make the right decisions or to come up with a workable strategy. Hopefully some of these other people talk sense into them, because whatever else you might think about the Saudis and the Qataris and the Kuwaitis and all those people in the region have a pretty big stake in making sure that this outcome is actually something that's not bad. Because I was looking at the end of this going, there are not a whole lot of good options here. This is not militarily, we're talking strategic level options.
Yeah. And the Strait of Hormuz will reopen. Well, that's great, but it was open before.
The devil's in the details there too. So
we just don't know.
One of the things that Iran has been insisting on is considering the Straits of Hormuz sovereign Iranian sea. The concept of a toll or a fee for the ship to go through the strait hasn't been received very well, but Iran has been trying to, put lipstick on a pig where they're talking about insurance or some sort of like guarantee, something that's not like you're going to have to pay me money that I'm. Otherwise, it's a nice ship that you have there. I hate something to have for it, and maybe you should give me some money so that nothing happens to that nice ship that you got over there. That classic protection racket kind of a thing that a mafia would do. So we'll see how that goes. But if the strait opens, but all the ships now have to pay a fee to Iran just to use the Strait of Hormuz, that's not a good outcome. It's open, but that's not a good outcome. That basically meant that for all of the military stuff that just happened, Iran just gained some serious ground on the world stage.
For all of the rhetoric, the bloviating, for so long, the Obama's deal was terrible and it's stupid and I'm going to negotiate a much better. This is what we got.
Yeah.
Chaos, high oil prices, escalating gas prices, a blockade on a blockade that doesn't seem to make any sense.
There's political friction at home because the president under the Constitution doesn't have the authority to go to war. He can use the military in an emergency situation, but this doesn't appear to have qualified. If we're attacked, he can use like post 9/11, before the War Powers Act, but like post Pearl Harbor. We were attacked, we're at war. Whether Congress declaring war is just kind of like the icing on the cake. We're already at war. This was a chosen war. There was no emergency. Iran hadn't attacked us. You could make the argument they had attacked Israel, but that has been going back till 1979. So where's the emergency? So Trump didn't do his homework, and the American voters aren't behind him. It looks like a war powers resolution is about to go through Congress because he's made enough members of Congress from his own party mad that they're not going to support a blank check. So we'll see. Yeah, the devil's going to be in the details here. I'm really curious what his thought of a great deal and opening the strait actually means.
Well, if it doesn't open, then we're looking at just ongoing chaos, problems with fertilizer prices, oil prices. It's going to affect food supplies.
Food price, is that what this is?
Fertilizer, oil, and maize.
Yeah.
Corn.
And you can see those spikes. There's the 2008 banking crisis. There was evidently a drought in the next decade, which I only kind of remember. There's the COVID-19, and then the start of the Ukraine war in 2022 spike. And now there's the Trump's an idiot spike. So
that's good.
Yeah.
That's very accurate.
So
it has been idiotic. Honestly, that's the best description.
So yeah, and it's big. You can see that it's bigger than the 2008-09 banking crisis. It's big.
Yeah. Well, you take 20% of the world's oil supply and you disrupt it, and it's big.
Well, except that it's weirder than that. So like the United States and probably Canada too are relatively insulated from any of this oil disruption because our domestic production is big enough, and we've got enough that if we were completely insulated from the world markets, we're not going to run out. But what that means, because the United States is the largest economy on the planet, and Canada is a big economy. It's part of the G7. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say G8. I'm so sorry.
Well, was almost with Russia.
So way back in 2004, I was a participant, very minor. Don't read anything big into this. I was there at the 2004 G8 summit. And so that's my closest experience. And so I keep wanting to say G8 because that's what I lived through. But the exports from the Persian Gulf go to some pretty big economies that the United States and Canada depend on. There's China is one of the big ones, which has something like half their oil coming from the Persian Gulf, liquid natural gas, fertilizer, all sorts of stuff. India, which is huge. I don't know if India's population got bigger than China or it's about to, but it's in that neighborhood where India and China both have 1.4, 1.5 billion people each. South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, all of these places over there that a lot of our stuff is made there. So whether or not in the USA or Canada we're insulated on the oil stuff, it's heavily impacting all sorts of places that we do most of our trade with. And so it's just, what a mess.
And while it may seem unrelated, it's very related with Trump's trip to China.
Yeah.
I don't think it went very well for him, honestly.
No. And Putin visited right after that, and it didn't go very well for Putin. So I'd be wondering what kind of game China is playing. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it just shows that they have achieved with Trump in the White House, it's like peer status.
Yeah.
China and the U.S., the economy, even the military.
Well, one of the fallouts of Trump's an idiot in Iran is that now the Americans don't maybe look so powerful because the way that we went about that, one, we chose to do it, which was just stupid. There's a reason why Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Trump version 1 and Biden did not invade Iran. There's a lot of reasons for that, and we're seeing that right now. What a mess.
So what are we looking at here?
This is this is just aircraft, American losses in Iran. Some of this stuff's on the ground. Some of this is not necessarily for to Iranian action. So 3 of those F-15s were evidently shot down by Kuwait, mistakenly thinking that they were inbound Iranians, but they were Americans on their way back. Some of them, like those 2 MC-130Js, and it's hard to see, but the A-10 at the bottom and the little birds right above. I think I'd have to look at the Jolly Greens, but some of those were destroyed by Americans on the ground to prevent Iran from capturing them. So it's not completely all of this is to Iranian action, but significant amounts of it are. And this is a significant chunk of military hardware, even for the United States. This is billions of dollars, probably tens of billions of dollars, because each one of those F-15Es is $100 million. Each one of those E-3Gs is probably $300, $400 million. The MQ-9s are cheaper, but those are $25 to $30 million a pop. Granted, they're 20 years old at this point, but still, these are not inexpensive bits of hardware. All the weapons that we shot off. At a conservative guess, the Pentagon is asking Congress for an additional $30 billion to pay for what we've already done. I think it's going to be more like $50 billion. I think that the $30 billion is they were trying to pad it, and they're going to hide some of the expenses elsewhere to make themselves not look so bad. But the real cost, like what we're saying, where China's not getting its oil, the fertilizer's expensive, food's expensive, $5 a gallon where I live for gasoline, just putting it into my car. So when you roll out all of these other expenses, I think it starts to look like 500 billion to $1 trillion real fast, which is a big cost. And it's not going to be paid by the U.S. government. It's just, how many citizens like me are paying for it just when we fill our cars up?
Right. Okay. Share global maritime trade transiting key choke points.
Yeah, so I did want to put some of this in perspective, where the Malacca Strait is over by Singapore. Some of the other stuff is a little bit more obvious where it is. I actually had to look up the Malacca Strait. I'm like, I know where that is, but then I had to look at it again. So you can see that about 8% of global maritime trade goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Hold on a second. Sorry, some pollen's getting to me. But that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story, because most of the Strait of Hormuz is oil, and a lot of the rest of it is not. So I didn't find a graph on how much of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz, but it's a lot.
Trade value passing through the
Yeah, you can see how China is up there at the top. UAE is up there at the top only because pretty much everything they do is through the strait. This I brought up because that blue bottom line is where the ships used to go, but Iran started choking that off, attacking ships there, dropping mines, forcing the ships to go further and further north and closer to Iranian territory, which puts them in closer range of Iranian weapons. So that was one of Iran's tactics, pushing everybody else on the field. This, until today, I don't know where this is going to turn out. This is why I was like, did you really reach a deal? Because this is what Iran had declared is its own sovereign territory in terms of sea. Like inside of those red lines in that shaded area, that's all Iranian seaway. And I would imagine Oman and the UAE have something to say about that. So we'll see when what actually shakes out here.
Yeah, because then it just brings into question international law and how far off the coast is considered sovereign territory for any nation, right? So you have...
Mm-hmm. But it's one measure of how strategically stupid this was. Yeah. 6 months ago, would Iran have even dreamt that they could be demanding something like this? You know?
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if he does this stupid stuff on purpose, but that's just me being a conspiracy theorist.
I just don't think he gets it. I don't think he understands what's going on. He thought this was a way to look powerful because he wants to be the greatest that ever was. Oh, I can't imitate his I'm a little bit at a loss on how this could possibly make sense.
Because it really, if on any sane level, it just hasn't made any sense. It doesn't.
It hasn't. And this is despite so I don't know if I mentioned this last time I was on, but Hegseth was big, and this is a relatively common thing for veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan in the U.S. And this goes all the way back to Vietnam, where some fools think that the rules of engagement are what prevented us from winning. And that just shows they didn't understand the conflict they were in. But Hegseth has this bee in his bonnet about rules of engagement. And he decided that this Iran war was going to have exactly no rules of engagement going on, which leads into a separate discussion. But the weird thing about this is he said, oh, no boots on the ground, which meant that the U.S. military had to fight this with one hand behind its back. So we didn't have any ground troops. We didn't have any allies because nobody else was. I'm not even sure we asked very many people before we started this, but not anybody was willing to, throw down 20,000 troops to help us, It would take a while to deploy, all sorts of reasons. But going in there with only air power, one of the ways that air power works, yes, you can take out SAM sites. Somebody took out the leadership. You can take out nodes of communication, cell towers, ground communication lines where you buried cables and stuff like that. You can take them out. You can take out transistors and power substations. You can do all sorts of things with the air power to knock them off their feet and knock them way back. But the thing about air power is that the most important effect that it has is this period of time that can last as short as hours if you've got a really competent enemy. And it might be able to last a week if somebody really has no idea what they're doing. And that's the period of chaos where you can go in with ground troops and just move, just roll through and take it. Because they are unable to resist. They lost their commanders. They lost their command and control. They lost their power. Just all these basic things that you need to effectively resist. But with Hegseth going, no ground troops, it took the biggest effect of air power and just completely took it off the table. So that wasn't the military's decision. That was Hegseth. And I don't get it. It was the air power campaign was brilliant. It was the professionalism and the expertise and the competence were on full display. And there was a whole chunk missing, and it was all Hegseth in the White House that removed that. So just, if you're going to do it right, is one of those things I would say from a veteran's perspective, and they couldn't even be bothered to do it right.
Yeah. So that's obviously affecting Trump's popularity.
Yep.
His approval ratings, which you touched on earlier.
Well, this is the Iran war. You can see that the Iran war was never popular. There was a section early on where, so you've got the lines, which are the polling averages, but the shaded areas are the margin of error. And you can see early on that the margin of error was actually overlapping, so that it was statistically possible that the more Americans actually approved than disapproved, because the margin of errors were actually overlapping. But you can see when that white area started to open up, a lot of the questioning and the answers and the polling would have to be so wrong for that to not be an accurate measure of what's going on. You can see that in the other polling thing with Trump.
Yeah. So here's his approval rating. Disapprove, 58%.
And this actually had gone up. the disapproval had gone, the approval, I'm sorry, the bottom number had actually gone up. It had been a couple of tenths of a percentage lower just yesterday or day before. But you can see where, again, the overlapping margin of error that lasted through early October, maybe mid-October, maybe end of October there. And the white area just started opening up on Trump's presidency, where this is more or less where Trump was at the end of his first term, right after the 6th of January insurrection, where he was so deeply unpopular that 8 or 9 Republican senators voted to remove him from office, voted to convict him of the impeachment. People say, well, the Congress didn't remove him. The Senate didn't convict him. But that was, in American history, impeachments are fairly rare. That was by far the most bipartisan impeachment in American history, and Trump is at the same approval as he was then. He's deeply, deeply unpopular in the United States.
Yeah, well, there are pretty strong feelings in a lot of places, even up here in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Or the recent visit of the governor of Louisiana to Greenland. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but that seems to be a recurring theme. Why did you think that was a good idea?
Yeah, I saw
he tried to hand out MAGA merchandise, and he was met with, I don't want this, to go home, to a couple of middle fingers. So,
yeah. I wish he would just stop.
There was one incident where a Greenland kid, the governor of Louisiana was saying to the Greenland kid, and he's like, the kid had no idea who this guy was. And he was like, kid's like, are you famous? And the governor was like, yeah, you want me to take a picture with me? And the kid said, no. Good job.
Yeah.
If I was a parent, I'd be proud of that kid.
Wow. So I am seeing that we have confirmation. U.S. Secret Service did shoot and killed. They shot and killed this apparent gunman who is said to have opened fire on officers at this security checkpoint. And of course, we've had the White House locked down as a result of that. And it looks like the incident took place at a checkpoint at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest.
All right, 17th and Pennsylvania, huh? I got to look that up.
I don't know if we have a map here or not. Maybe find it on Google Maps.
Yeah, Lafayette, I'm seeing it. It was about between, it depends on how you count it. It was a block or two, and who knows where the actual incident took place. Didn't they say near that 17th in Pennsylvania?
Well, it said it was at a Secret Service checkpoint at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. So it would be at that intersection.
Yeah, so that explains why, because that's a block or two from the actual White House. I had Google Maps opened up, but that explains why. I was like, yeah, that's not close.
So it says he pulled a gun out of a bag and fired at officers. I have to wonder,
this is suicide by cop kind of a thing.
Like what's the point? What's the motivation? Why would you do that?
I don't see how that remotely makes any sense whatsoever, because the White House is going to be crawling with Secret Service just in, normal, safe, we're lazy kind of times.
Yeah.
And there's going to be several dozen, at a minimum, Secret Service agents patrolling the White House at any given time. And like one guy going up to a checkpoint, that strikes me as crazy suicide by cop time.
Yeah, I just clearly the president's life not
even remotely.
Yeah, not in any kind of danger.
That ABC News reporter that was ducking, that was outside was in more danger than Trump, and she was in no danger.
Yeah, big. Speaking of Greenland, too, there was a protest in Greenland with people. I think they were shouting, "We don't want to be Americans."
I heard there were some that were saying "Go home" if it was the same protest, but it might be a different one.
Yeah, I have video here.
This is another one of this. How does this remotely make sense with what Trump is doing?
It does if you look at this whole
here's the thing,
carving up the world into spheres of dominance. It makes sense.
But the thing is that we already had full access to Greenland. And if we had asked Denmark and Greenland, hey, can we put more military installations on Greenland? That would have been an almost automatic yes. Just like it would have been an unthinking, like, yeah, sure, go for it.
It's the dumbest thing ever.
Why make a fuss?
Demonstrators protest against Trump as U.S. diplomats open new consulate in Nuuk.
I have arranged it precisely because the new consulate opens today and there will be coverage from the US. So the purpose is to make the American people understand that Greenland is a democratic country, and in a democratic country, no means no.
Well, Trump doesn't understand that. He grabs life by the you-know-what.
Yeah.
Well, if that consulate opened today, that started construction under the Biden administration. That didn't get built in a year.
Have we ever had a president that went around picking fights with
allies?
Close
friends?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
We've had like the warmest relationship with both Greenland and Denmark for decades. It's like, how on earth would picking a fight with Greenland? That's what I was saying, is that instead of being a jerk about it, if you just said, hey, would you mind if we did this? They would have been like, sure.
That's what I've been saying about the 51st state stuff from the beginning. I was like, if he had said, hey, would you like to be part of the would you like to be the 51st state? I might have said, okay. But when he's sitting down there doing it the way that he's doing it, in a very coercive, aggressive manner, saying, we don't need anything you have. And I'm like, F off.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very weird. That's okay. We'll get through it somehow.
Lots and lots of tequila.
I have family, relatives in the Detroit area, so I don't even want to say it.
And the American-Canadian ties, the border was open. Did you even need a passport to go between Canada and the USA?
No.
I don't know if you do now, but you didn't in the past.
You do now. You have to have a passport after 9/11. But before, it used to be show a driver's license and have a great day. That was it. All my whole life until 9/11. Then things changed.
It was probably still not that big of a deal.
No, it wasn't. For a long time, I would go over here's my passport. That was the only difference. We used to be a driver's license. Then it was a passport. Just show the passport.
No big deal.
They'd ask a few standard questions, then wave you through. That's it.
Yeah, the we're friends kind of a thing.
I'm very Americanized. I grew up 2 hours from the Windsor-Detroit border. I lived in Windsor for over a decade. I used to go over to Detroit once a week, twice a week.
Before your listeners and watchers want to string me up, there wasn't a whole lot of difference. I mean, America and Canada were so close. Captain Kirk was Canadian. I'm sorry that you inflicted some other artists on us, but
we sent you Mike Myers and
some of the
Fox and
some of the William
Lauren
Shatner
Green.
Singing is pure gold. So thank you for that. But I mean, just we shared so much. I watched Strange Brew, was one of my favorite movies growing up, the McKenzie brothers. And, if you put a mouse in a beer, you get free beer. I loved that movie growing up. I just don't get it. Like, why on earth would you like, you guys need to be, I don't get it. Unless I mean, there's some more conspiratorial stuff. Did he actually have a stroke last September? Is it congestive heart failure, as some people are speculating, with the puffiness and the hands and the ankles and some of the puffiness here? But without actually examining him, any of these doctors saying, well, maybe it's this, they didn't examine him. So it's just one of these speculative things. It's educated speculation, but it's still speculation. So did something happen? And this is just like, I got a limited time to live and I'm just going to do everything I possibly can. There's no rational explanation that's like, oh yeah, I understand why they're doing this kind of a thing. Or like, once it's explained to me, I'm like, yeah, that actually does make sense. It wasn't obvious, but now it makes sense. I got none of that right now. I got nothing that's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. We're not even close to that right now.
Yeah. Well, have we covered all the bases here tonight, or is there anything else that we need to touch
pretty
on?
much. I did I don't know if it was a mistake, but I did read some of the comments over at Rumble. And a lot of them, okay, but there was one that we should touch on, going back to Ukraine, where there's a lot of Russian claims that they're just BS. There might be a kernel of truth buried way deep in there, but it's BS once you get to the Russian claim kind of a thing. The one that actually has some legs is that Ukraine is still fighting over some corruption, and we just saw a couple of those things that hit. And so when people are like, okay, what about Ukrainian corruption? That is a valid question. The response is that Ukraine is actually dealing with it. Ukraine only won its independence from Russia mafioso style oligarchy as their standard of law and banking and government. It's just corruption through and through. They only won independence from that in 2014, which means a lot of their institutions were just rife with the Russian style corruption. And this is one of those, this is just too cute by half, where the Russian propaganda is like, Ukrainian corruption. I'm like, where did that come from? Gee, I wonder. But there's been a couple of things where even recently where some people are like, yeah, this is not okay. There's been arrests. The bottom line is that Ukraine for 12 years now has been rooting out corruption, sometimes faster than others. The past 4 years have been incredibly rapid. This is one of the Tulsi Gabbard claims where she was talking about Ukraine was outlying one of the, she called it the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, but it was under the Russian Patriarchy of Orthodoxy, which a lot of the priests were Russian agents. They were giving targeting information, this, that, and the other thing. And so, yes, Ukraine does have corruption problems. The United States has corruption problems. The Canadians have corruption problems. Everybody has corruption problems. But Ukraine is really, really digging it out. They're going after it.
Well, in fact, in order to get membership in the EU, that's been one of the conditions, is they were told you have to deal with your corruption problem, which a lot of it they did inherit from Russia because of the culture and the system of government that was there. Oligarchy.
They had banks and lawyers and government offices, and everybody up and down military had to hire Western consultants. So, like, how do you actually get this done? One of the things that Finland and Sweden had to do to join NATO, that Ukraine has more or less done about 90% of what they did, is taking the corruption out of their military, making sure that sergeants have real training, real authority, real competence. Officers are not corrupt. Officers actually have professional training and can actually do their job, as opposed to the head of the Russian military, Gerasimov, who's not a general. He's a mafioso clan head. Sergei Shoigu, who has been disappeared, I'm not even positive he's alive anymore, used to be one of the two heads of the military. He's gone, but he wasn't a general either. So, there's a lot of just up and down. Ukraine's been really rooting it out. And it makes sense that if you got a bad officer in a combat situation, this has been one of those things that Ukraine's like, okay, this guy's got to go.
Yeah.
They've
in fact,
come
it was
a long way in 4 years.
Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was in a way at odds with it, because it was the military corruption that resulted in a lot of arms being diverted and funds for arms being diverted. And then he was pretty upset about not having the resources at the front line for the Wagner Group mercenaries. And he called a lot of that stuff out. And I think that's one of the contributing factors to his threatened or almost attempted coup attempt. And of course he was. And
his later assassination.
Yes. Yeah.
There's been a lot of people in Russia falling out of windows.
Yeah. Or airplanes.
Yes. Or airplanes in Prigozhin's case. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know. The Russian propaganda machine gets fired up, and it gets very focused even up here in Canada, because they want to undermine support for the war so that the funding stops. If they can stop all the funding, they'll win the war by default, because it'll neuter the military.
I'm not even sure they can anymore. When I was there, one of the reasons I was there was smoothing logistic supply chains and getting. So one of the problems in Russia that we're dealing with citizens that are not protesting is the person that you trust the least is the person right next to you, because Russia has a system of report your neighbor kind of a thing. If you see somebody getting out of line, well, report them to the Secret Service, the secret police. So Ukraine inherited that fear, that cultural fear, where one of the problems through 2023 and into 2024, it's better now, was you would have, so for instance, that cruise missile that I said, well, they had built it and designed it, what used to be an auto repair shop. It was not a big building. It was maybe 20 or 30 people that were working there. And they have 10,000 of those little things all over Ukraine, but they weren't talking to each other because of this fear that they inherited from being in the Russian and Soviet system. That was breaking down some of that. But Ukraine has solved some of those problems, even at that basic cultural level, where people are getting some crosstalk, some cross-fertilization, where somebody has an idea over here, which is a good idea, but doesn't really do anything until, somebody over here, you combine those two ideas and all of a sudden things just go. And one of the reasons Ukraine has been so successful in the drone innovation and on that medium strike, on that Rostov to Crimea road, and the deep strike all the way to the Urals, is they've solved a lot of that this homespun Ukrainian, not just defense, but attack is just, it's off the charts at this point. It's really effective.
Well, I guess we will have to wait to find out what the deal with Iran is.
We'll see when they tell us
anything new tonight.
Well, the reason that I really want this to end well. So this is not me saying it should continue, because it was just starting. It was stupid. But we've seen this before from the Trump administration. Well, they'll announce something on a Friday or a Saturday night. This is the Memorial Day weekend. I don't know if you have this in Canada, but this is a big federal holiday. We've got Monday off. It's like the unofficial start of the summer barbecue season. But Memorial Day is when we pay tribute to our fallen military people. And so they waited to Friday and Saturday on a long weekend to announce this, where a lot of people aren't even paying attention. So they call it burying it in the news cycle. So we've seen this before. How much do I actually trust that this is something real, or even something, if it's real, how much do I trust that it's something good? Because they buried it.
Well, and other news going on that I just haven't even touched on. Possible big explosion, the threat of an explosion in California.
Was that chemical plant thing?
Yeah,
or storage or whatever.
1,000 people evacuated from the surrounding area. That's huge.
We haven't touched on the Ebola thing. Good thing that the U.S. withdrew from the World Health Organization. We dismantled all of our ability to detect, much less help. There's a direct through line that the complete cessation of American aid in these directions meant that this was not caught. It was already a bad epidemic before they even noticed it, because USA had withdrawn. The money was gone. The doctors were gone. The testing was gone. Everything was gone.
Honestly, many of the things Trump was pushing, as part of his platform in Trump 1.0, and then carried over, some of the things where I thought, okay, well, that sort of makes sense. If you pull out of the World Health Organization, maybe, there is a threat to your sovereignty in a sense, because you're, I guess, giving up some of your decision making to an international body. But in reality, as you dig into it further, you find out that it's really not true. And
because diseases don't know anything about international borders. They could care less about a line on a map.
Yeah. And so the rhetoric for just about all of these things is completely upside down. And now in Trump 2.0, as he's implementing some of the things he just never got to the first time around, you're seeing that what he has been promising and advocating for, it's just not so. It's the opposite. It's having really negative effects on the country. He's doing incredible levels of harm to the United States.
And all of this added up, it explains why that graph shows how deeply unpopular he is, even in the United States.
Right, because he can lie all he wants, but when people go to the grocery store or the gas pump, they see the actual lives. One of the I don't know if you want to call it passive aggressive, but at least they're doing something, is people will print out these pictures of Trump pointing at something that says, I did this, and they'll put it on the gas pump. So, or the grocery store or wherever they put it. Yeah. Well, with that, Mike, I'll throw it over to you for final thoughts tonight to kind of bring us home and wrap it up.
I'm going to go back to something that I tried to say a different time, and I didn't say as well as I wanted to. There's one thing that I kind of lived as a sergeant in the military, and it's one of those unofficial things of like, yeah, I'll get it done. Let's get it done. Sergeants are the ones that get things done. But what that means is that there's a certain amount of, we can do something about that. I can, instead of watching, instead of passive, ingesting of the news, and I can have my opinion and I can complain, but I'm not really affecting anything. Get out there and do something. I have friends in harm's way in Ukraine, so I did something. I got gear to them. I continue to help them in various ways. When we're in this situation, you're not helpless. You're just as powerful as anybody else. You've got things you can do. And if you can figure out a way to be productive about it, I'm not remotely saying anybody should be disruptive or chaotic or in any way doing bad things. Get something done. Help people out. Make things better. Even if it's just something small. Don't just sit there and complain. Get out there and do something.
Spoken like a true maverick. I am going to show you some footage that has just come in. This looks a lot like the previous footage, but this is a different post from apparently a different source, and this is being described as two Oreshnik missile strikes on Kiev tonight. I don't know if it is true or not.
It still seems slow, but we'll see.
Here we go.
I mean, this is similar footage to what we saw.
Yeah. No audio with this one.
I don't know if it's that same footage or not, but it's similar. It's even from a similar angle to that first video that we watched.
It is, isn't it? There's some audio.
Yeah. They did say, so I got two friends in Kiev that I'm in daily contact with, and they both said that there was a ballistic missile warning. Russia doesn't have a lot of Oreshniks, so maybe they used one of their very, very few of those. But they have a lot of ballistic missiles that they're dangerous. The Kinzhals, and there's another one that I can't.
And Iskander, they're saying that here's more footage. The claim is that
even if
Iskander M ballistic missile,
even if it's not an Oreshnik, those ballistic missiles are dangerous.
Yeah. So this is the footage. Pixelated, blurred out. I don't know why. Why would they do that?
And it's got that watermark, and so you're in the middle of an air raid in the middle of the night. It's dark. You're trying to use your phone. There's all sorts of reasons why it might not be the highest quality.
That looks like intentional pixelation to me.
Well, the watermark is going to pixelate it a little bit, and yeah.
And then as I scroll down, this looks like a little bit different angle, but is this the same? Looks like it's got to be the same.
That's the same angle. It might or might not be the same video, but it's the same angle.
So those are multiple entry ballistic,
multiple independent re-entry vehicles. Yeah.
Yeah.
MIRVs.
So that's where we're at tonight, and the threat's still there.
Mm-hmm. And Ukraine's fighting back. So, yeah, they're getting hit, but they didn't give up. They're fighting back.
And we'll try to stay on top of it overnight. If there's anything really major in the middle of the night, sometimes I'm alerted, and I'll even come back on live if warranted. So keep your radar up. We might be coming back. But tonight, that's the latest on these really three big major sort of breaking stories, with the Iran possible peace deal, the shooter taken down near the White House, which is another weird story, and we've got you updated now on Ukraine. Thanks to you, Mike.
Well, hopefully somebody learned something.
All right, and folks, we'll try to bring more information of value to you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side. See you then.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.